Welcome to Frank Factualities, the podcast. My name is Yolanda. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the show. Thank you all again. What has been going on with everyone? I am doing just fine. It is Love Week. I'm actually recording this episode on Valentine's Day. I'm sure by the time you all hear this, it won't be. It would be either later that week or maybe even the next week. But everyone is celebrating love, and to see such positivity, I guess, for once on social media is really pleasant. I know that a lot of times we see so much negativity and so many different just reckless posts that it's refreshing to see people celebrating love. So I've seen the posts of people saying like, okay, I celebrate love every day. I don't necessarily need a holiday to do that. We don't celebrate Valentine's Day, these couples, these married couples. But all in all, I think that if nothing else, it's refreshing to just see positive images of love, whether it's black, white, or other. It is love. And it's refreshing. So what's going on in the streets? Just love and positivity for now. And that's what I've been seeing and what I choose to see. And my eyes have been blind to anything else. I did not do anything on today because, of course, it's a regular, smegular, degular Tuesday. And that would have just been so much mixing up on a work day. So I actually hung out this past weekend and I actually got to see my favorite poet. And his name is Obi West. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I shared a photo of us. I think I did share it on Facebook as well, but I shared it on my personal page and not on my Frank Factualities page, but on my Instagram, Frank Factualities, I definitely shared a photo of the two of us. So that was really refreshing. He performed some poems from his album, which I listen to on a regular basis. So that was good to see those, some of my favorite poems being recited. But then he also shared some things that I didn't see, and it was a really nice, intimate thing. And I know not everyone is into poetry, but to me, seeing my favorite poet was like seeing your favorite artist. That's how it felt to me. It was just really like, oh my God, it's really him in the flesh. And I follow him on Instagram, so he's always reciting these poems on his page and doing reels. And he lives all the way in Las Vegas. So in my mind, I'm just like, I'm never going to see this guy. And the one time I may go to Vegas, I'm not going to be able to catch him. He won't have any shows. So to see that he had something in Charlotte, which he did, I think, last year sometime, but I think he ended up getting COVID and wasn't able to show up to the show. So this time he made it and I was able to make it. So it was really, really refreshing. So my husband took me and it was really great for just us to kind of get out. So that is what I did. And actually the event was, of course, like a pre-Valentine's Day event. So all of the poets were discussing, or artists were talking about love. And I've heard my poet recite this poem before, but I thought it would be interesting to go a little deep on love. And not that we haven't talked about love in all facets on the show before, but something that he said resonated, and it always did. And it kind of gets you to think a little deeper about what love really is. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about love and whether or not it's a myth. And that's actually one of the names of his poems, is Love is a Myth. And I'm not going to recite it because you can't do that kind of stuff. He owns the rights to his own things and I can't just sit up here and play it or recite it. But again, his name is Obi West. And I want to say the name of the album is Unstable or Unstable Man, one out the two, but it's on Apple Music. That's where I downloaded it. And you can look up the poem and listen to what he says. But anyway, I got some notes this time, which means I'm semi-prepared. All right, so let's get into it. So one of the lyrics, or what he suggested in his poem, was that when have you ever seen a romantic love that was not paired with pain? That's one of the things that he said to me that was deep. And it rings true. But he also said that the kind of love that we're imagining is not realistic, because we're imagining it from whatever films or plays that we see. And the hardest part is when we are trying to find someone who imagines love the same way that we do. Now, isn't that reel, like I just thought that was so deep. And one of the reasons why I like poetry, because it does cause you to think deep, and the people are going deep when they are writing their poetry. But to me, that resonates for someone on this love week or in this love week that is lonely or sad or depressed, because they are seeing all of these positive posts and they're not in such a good mood as I am. But that just reigns true, that just because you're lacking love doesn't mean that you're not worthy, or that you're missing out on something, because what are you truly missing out on? And I also saw a reel where a guy was just saying, well, you know what, the reason love is out there, the reason why it hasn't, you haven't caught it yet, I guess, is because something's in the way. You have an obstacle that hasn't allowed love to find you. So what is that obstacle for you? Is it that you're not ready for love because you're preoccupied with other things, whether that be your children, whether that be work, whether it's your pride that's in the way, whether it's pain that's in the way, whether it's fear that's in the way. But once you find that whatever whatever barrier or obstacle it is that's in the way of you finding that love, once you get rid of that, then love will come. So is that really true? I think it is. And more so when something's blocking that you're not aware of. And the only example I can think of is when someone's still dealing with a breakup and they tend to still talk about or discuss that person and how they've done them wrong. Love could be staring you in the face, but because you have not gotten over that previous hurt and you still want to relive it and rekindle it and bring it up and just regurgitate all the negativity, you can't see past that. And sometimes you can't see what's right in front of you. Sometimes love has been sent your way, but you are so preoccupied with pain that you don't see it. You're still so in the place of, why did they do this to me? How could they have done this to me? And when somebody's going, you're just glad to have a listening ear, glad to have somebody entertain you, but you run that person off because you're so busy saying, my last partner did this, my ex did this, well, she didn't do this, he didn't do that. And now that person is looking like, okay, clearly this person didn't heal. And we've all been in that place. That's no shade to anyone. We've all been in a place where we meet somebody and we're still stuck on what the last person did for us. That is a clear sign that you have not moved on past whatever ex. But that is what's hindering you from finding new love until you've completely healed from that. And when I say that, I mean that you're not constantly comparing who you meet with what that person did or didn't do. When you no longer meet someone and you're sitting there wondering to yourself that, okay, they don't compare, they don't look the same, they're not doing the same things. Until you can get completely out of that space, then you haven't healed, and you are the reason why you're blocking that love. But we got to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with ourselves to say, am I ready? And I don't know if there's ever like a true ready, and you won't know that until you put yourself out there. But I definitely know that anytime you are thinking or discussing your ex, that's definitely a red flag. And I am guilty of that myself. And I know that for me in the past, I don't know if I would necessarily be talking about, not with like a real true potential boyfriend, but what I do know I've done is that I look for that one thing that ex did not do in the new person. So I kind of forego everything else. So say, for example, that person didn't like to go out. Now, if the new person likes to go out, that's all I see. I see that, oh my God, they're amazing because they want to take me out all the time. But then I forget all the other stuff that I want in a relationship. The fact that I want someone that's going to listen to me and that has the same type of morals and just feels the same way spiritually I do. Like all of that stuff, not that it doesn't matter, but that's not what's on the forefront of my brain. And that's not what I'm thinking about in the moment. I'm only thinking about, okay, I was lacking this in my last relationship, and this is what I want so bad. So I end up falling for that person who gives me that one thing that I was missing so much from this previous relationship. And now that I get it in this current relationship, it's like, oh my God. And then later down the line, when that trick that they have, which is doing what the other person didn't do, has worn off, then I see the real them. And it's like, well, wait a minute. They don't have all of the qualities that I want in a person. So I have to reset and not necessarily jump right into something and that person technically be a rebound, because that's when you are kind of off your kilter, when you jump into something and that person is just a pass-through person. And that's painful to always hurt somebody when you're dealing with a rebound. I've been plenty of rebound in my day, and that's a painful thing, to just be that middle person to get that person back in their groove. It's like, okay, I've been down bad, and now I got this person that uplifts me, and they're very caring, and they treat me how I want to be treated, but I just needed to get my groove back, and now I got it back, and okay, let me jump to the person that I really wanted to pursue. Yeah, this person was good. They brought me back to life, but bye. And we don't see it that way, or the person who's doing it doesn't see it that way. And people have been my rebound, so I'm speaking from both experiences. But it's really good for you to be your own rebound, for you to replenish and reset yourself, and not involve anybody in that process, because I'm a firm believer in you reap what you sow, and the unjust doesn't prosper. So when you do bad or you do dirt, you get dirt. So be very careful of the way you treat people during that process, because you in turn will end up at some point being that to somebody else and going through the same pain that you inflicted. So to all my people out there that feel like they're missing something, ask yourself in that one vein, hey, am I the one that's blocking myself from finding, or love finding me? Let me say it that way, because you may not either be seeking, you may be so focused on other things, you may just subconsciously just not know that you're pushing people away because you're always just super busy, you're always just doing things, and you don't seem to want to make the time for it. We never know how we come across the other people. I always say that, like, in our mind, we have this persona of who we are and how the world perceives us, or people just in general. But 9 times out of 10, that is never how people see us. And so are you coming across as a woman who doesn't need a man? And sometimes men can see that, when it's just like, okay, I'm super busy, I don't need this, I got all of this on my own. I know as a woman, sometimes we don't want to seem like the damsel in distress, but sometimes I feel like men do want you to need them sometimes. Not just want them, because yeah, we want men, but they want to feel like we need them. And a lot of times us, just women in general, sometimes want to put on that, I can do this by myself, I just need help and support sometimes, but for the majority of the time, I got this. And that is a hard thing, at least for me, to be vulnerable and to say, okay, I'm gonna let go, I'm gonna say I need it, or I am going to be completely just transparent about how I feel when it comes to what I need, and not just what I need sexually, but what I need emotionally, what I need spiritually, and to be transparent with that. So let's move on to my next point that I wanted to make. So he also talks about how the in love versus love and like. And we say this all the time, well, I love him or I love her, but I'm not in love. And he pretty much said, like, well, it seems like in love can't withstand a lot, in that if you're mad at someone, somehow you're no longer in love with them. And that in love seems to be weak, and that it can diminish at any point depending on what someone has done to you. But when you love someone, love can withstand way more than in love, because again, I love them, but I'm not in love. And why are you not in love? Is it that you're not in love anymore because you don't like the person? There are things that they do that you just despise, and so you love them because you've been there with them and for them for so long, and you can't imagine them not being some part of your life at some point. And so you care for them, which then equates to love. And I say this all the time, to me, you were never truly in love with someone if you still don't love them. And that's just true. Now, you can love them and not want to be with them, but did you really love them if you just have completely no feelings whatsoever for them? So I understood what he said when he says, I don't want anybody to be, I don't want no lazy ass love. And he would prefer for somebody to just like him, because if you like me, then you can tolerate me, and then we can work this thing out so that we can sustain a long life of love, versus you're in love. And if you really think about it, being in love is this like infatuated feeling. It's this surreal euphoria type of feeling. It feels like, oh my God, I'm in heaven, I'm in la la land, logic goes completely out of the window. You never think straight when you're just like, oh my God, I'm in love, where you're falling asleep on the phone and you're daydreaming about them and all of those things. It's a unrealistic feeling that doesn't last very long. Quickly that goes out of the window, and then you just love them. That in love completely thing just kind of just whoo. Now some people, little in love euphoria feeling lasts a little longer than others, but for the most part, you have this little fuzzy feeling and it goes away. So to him, or even to me, to sustain that I love him, you got to like the person. You got to really like them. And I think what I can say is, I remember, I don't really want to say it was dating, but I was seeing someone and it wasn't a serious relationship. And we would meet up to, you know what we meet up for. And I am very chatty. I like to talk a lot, which is why, of course, I wanted to do a podcast, because I don't take myself serious. So I'm always kind of jovial and jokey, and long and short, I just talk a lot. And if I was seeing him like right after work, or just like after I'm doing something and I just want to talk about my day or something that happened, I could tell that they were super annoyed. Like, okay, be quiet. Like, let's do this. I don't want to hear that. And then eventually it dawned on me that they didn't like me. They tolerated me for what they could get from me, but I don't think they really liked me, because liking me came with, ooh, she a chatterbox. Ooh, she liked to talk. And the fact that it was to the point where sometimes the hand was to my mouth, like, okay, I don't want to hear you talk. Let's just do what, you came to do type of vibe. And then I quickly realized, like, okay, this may not be it. You know what I'm saying? Because I need the person to like me. I mean, I need you to like every part of me. The fact that I am chatty, the fact that I am jovial, the fact that I might cuss a little bit, and that I'm not going to always be ladylike. That has to just be, okay, I like her. And then fall in love with me and say, okay, I like her so much so that I can't imagine life without her. And that is what ultimately you want to find. You want to find somebody, number one, just like you, just rock with you like that. And I mean, like you in that I like all the quirks about you. We have things in common. We can chat and talk about. Humor is always a plus for me. If you can make me laugh, we can get along. You understand? So I think that learning whether or not, or figuring out whether or not you are in love with the person, or whether or not you love that person, whether or not that's something. And again, like I said, you can love someone and not want to be with them, especially when you realize you don't like them anymore and that you don't want to make it work. And I think I told you all about my ex, who was like really, really addicted to drugs. I think I discussed that in my toxic relationship episode, so you guys can go back to listen to that. But again, as I stated earlier, I got with him and he gave me something I'd never had before, which was a family. His relationship with him was attached to a family that supported me and that loved me. And in my previous relationship, I had a guy to break up with me because I had a child, and his parents didn't want him to date a girl that had a baby. So when I got with this guy, his family was so just embracing, and I fell in love with that. But long and short, I didn't break up with him because I wasn't even in love at the time. I loved him, but I recognized that I could not be with him because of the baggage and the drama and the stress that he brought. So I had to let it go. And that actually taught me a lot. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why I say, like, you can be, I believe that you can be in love, the difference between, in love and loving someone, because I loved him, but I wasn't in love and I didn't like him anymore because of things that he was doing. And with that, it was easy to let go because I wasn't in this like la la land of, but I can fix him, because ultimately. You can't fix anyone. You got to just accept them for who they are and everything that comes with that. And if it's a part of them that's, not there, then it's not. And also, I always preach about reciprocity. It got to be an equal give and take, because we're talking about now how you feel about somebody. We're talking about how you feel about somebody, but how do they feel about you? And more importantly, how do they make you feel? Because if you love them and they love you, but they don't like you, or they're in love and they don't like you, the things just don't want to work. And I do believe you kind of got to find somebody that imagines love the same way that you do, because those love languages, even though they're just like 5 of them, I think there are other ways that you can love people, but I think it's important to love people the way that they want to be loved. And a lot of times we want to love them the way that the way that we want to be loved. And I hope I said that right. I confused myself. For example, a woman, and he gave these great stories at the poetry jam, I'm gonna call it that. Just say, for example, you grew up in a house, and it may not have been him, it may have been one of the other poets, but either way, you grew up in a house and all you saw was a outward display of love. Your parents always said they loved one another. They brought gifts. They exchanged gifts. They shared and hugged you. It was pretty much like a smothered situation. All of the love was always displayed and just extra on ump. So that's how you grew up, thinking that this is how I'm supposed to show my love. Hold on. So you get in a relationship and this guy feels like, oh my God, this woman is smothering me, because this is not a love that he recognizes and appreciates. And it's not something that he sees as I need it, because he's a little bit like, okay, I like my space. I like my free time. And then now you love him and you're showing him the way that you have learned how to show love. But he is a person that the way he receives that you care about him is that you respect his boundaries. And part of the boundary is I need my space when I need my space. But him asking for space says to you that he doesn't love me, because he doesn't want to be around me 24/7, and he doesn't want to show public displays of affection and blah, 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 blah. So again, imagining love the same way somebody else does is a hard thing to find. I think it's very important that we love people the way that they want to be loved, but also respect people's boundaries and the way that they feel like they need to be given space and distance. So in that situation, what could she have done? Okay, he knows that I like it, and compromise to me is the biggest thing in making a relationship work. It's not counseling. I mean, I'm a proponent for counseling, but compromise is the biggest thing. At the end of the day, I'm not going to always like what you like. I'm not going to always want to do what you want to do. But if I can compromise from time to time and say, you know what, I'm going to take the L on this, and then the next time I know he'll take the L on it, because he know I don't like to watch football, but I know that that's what he likes to watch. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be quiet. I ain't going to aggravate him. I ain't going to ask him nothing to do anything for me. This is my compromise, and sitting here through this game and just being quiet and still so that they can watch the game in peace. That's my compromise, because normally I wouldn't do that. And then in turn, if I want to hold hands when we go out in public, then they'll hold hands, even though that's something that they're not comfortable with, because they see the compromise in me. And if you don't have anybody that's willing to love you the way you want to be loved, and to make that type of compromise with you because they like you that much, to want to love you for a long time, then it's time to start over. But again, love isn't the end all be all. I think it's important for us to connect with ourselves and find out what makes us whole outside of that. And then once we can figure out what makes us whole, then we can move on to see, we can move on to then now see what is blocking us from now finding that if we don't have it. And if we do have it, how can we sustain it? How can we maintain that feeling where we still are with one another? Now, we ain't talked about no ups, downs, sideways, or none of that stuff. But I can't tell you all to listen to these marriage podcasts and married couple retreat thingies, because what works for one couple may not work for the other couple. A lot of those marriage camps are like Bible based, and that's okay if that's how you live your life, because if it's faith based and that's what you mirror, by all means. I think what I see in a lot of these is, in my podcast by no means is marriage based. And I think you guys know that because even though I am married, I rarely talk about marriage. And but that's because, again, that's just a boundary that has been set when, again, my husband and I talked about me having this podcast. It was something that he wasn't comfortable with, me sharing woes, ups and downs. And so I respected that boundary, and I just don't go there. However, if I were to me, you got to be 100% transparent. And if you're not going to be Michelle Obama honest when it comes to marriage, then there's no need for you to be on any platform talking to anybody about how a relationship works. If you're not willing to be 100%, you can't just be like generic stuff. Oh, you need to treat your woman good. You got to show her this. What obstacles have you came across, and how have you overcome those? And you got to be transparent, because how else you going to tell me whether or not it works? Because when people do ask me about relationship, personal, like people I know on a personal basis, I don't have a problem with telling them that it was, that therapy works. Therapy works on any relationship, whether it's marriage, whether it's friendships, whether it's relationships. And when I learned that trick from my therapist about the negative cycle and how you can get into that negative cycle, and how important it is to, number one, find out how you express yourself through your primary emotions versus your secondary emotions, I have a whole lot more understanding of just myself in general, and then how I communicate with people, and how I receive communication from people, and how I can stop skirting around the issue whenever I have one with someone, and just basically getting to the point and understanding what their point is. And if I don't understand what their point is, being able to articulate to them, I don't understand, help me to understand. And that is what I say to people. If you are having a hard time, yeah, you kind of have to have a mediator, because a lot of times you're not going to see your faults or your flaws. And we typically don't. None of us do. We sit there and we think that we're always right because it's how we feel. And I'm the first one to say that how I feel is important. That is my truth. But because you're so busy boycotting for, this is my feelings, it is how I feel, this is what I want, you are completely blind and blocked to that other person and their feelings, because you just want to be heard. And sometimes when they only come back at you with how they feel, you don't feel like they now have heard what you said and have acknowledged it and understood it, because their retort to you is, I feel this way. So it's not, what I heard from you is, and this is what you're saying. If I heard you correctly, you're saying X, Y, Z. And that to me is important. Stop, acknowledge what the person says. Make sure you understand what they've said completely. And if you've understood what they said and you repeat it back to them, if I heard you correctly, what you're saying is X, Y, Z, then trust me, just that little thing will probably eliminate, not all, but most of your arguments. Because guess what? If that wasn't what they said, then they're going to say, no, that's not what I'm saying. And then they're going to repeat it. And then you say again, okay, so let me make sure I get this. And not in an attitude. So what you're saying is, no, if I heard you correctly, so you're saying blah, blah, blah. And then make sure you're clear about that before you move into what your argument is, because ultimately that's all people want. They just want to be heard. People want to be heard. People want to be heard. They want to be understood. And if they're heard and they're understood, then now I feel like you can have a clear level of communication. And it's important to just not cloud your judgment and be so much in love that you don't really see what's going on. So frankly, the fact of the matter is, don't block love. Receive it if it's there. Take care of whatever challenges that you have that may be holding you back from being sustaining your love, or from receiving love ultimately. And make sure that the person that you're with, you like them. You truly like them. You like them for who they are, not for an image, not for what they can provide, not because they like your kids, not because they got a good job, and not because they have money, because again, all of those things can be taken away. All of those things are not substantial. Do you like me, the person, who I am, the character, my character, who I am to my core? Do you like that? Do you like it? And if you don't necessarily like it, and there are things you like, well, yeah, she too loud, or, he a little bit too jokey, and then your answer is already right there. You're not going to be able to, not going to be able to handle it. It's not going to work. So that's my time, guys. I loved talking about love with you all. Make sure that if you are watching me on YouTube, you are hitting the like, you are subscribing, and catch some of my shorts because I've been posting a few of those. I might like double back and post some that on my reels to my YouTube because those have been making some major numbers on Instagram. So I made sure to share the love on YouTube. If you are listening to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Amazon Music or iHeartRadio or any of those things, please be sure that you are following the podcast and subscribing. Leave a comment, hit the like button, all of those things to just let me know, like, hey, I'm here. I like the podcast I'm hearing. I've been getting a lot of feedback in the community. When I go certain places, I hear people saying, I love the podcast. I want to thank you all for listening. It really does mean a lot to me, whether it's one episode or all episodes. I couldn't do any of this without seeing that you guys have been receiving it well. So till next week, I will holla at you guys. It's been my pleasure, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.